How's it going, y'all? Aiden Anderson here with Moscow Report. It's election season here in Moscow once again, and that means it's time for another round of Candidate Candids. In this series, we talk to candidates running in the local elections to learn more about them, their platform, and what they hope to do in office if elected. We're focusing on the city-level races this year, and in this video, we have Moscow City Council candidate John Slagboom. Let's get into it. John, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. Enjoying this beautiful day at East City Park.
Indeed. I suppose it goes without saying, but we're about a month into the campaign season for this year, so how's it going so far?
Well, it's really ramping up. It's started in September, really, so filed in August and started figuring it out in September. And it was like, okay, this is my first time doing this. Probably apparent to everybody watching this, but like this is my first time doing this, and I'm just gonna start doing. Like I gotta figure out how to fundraise, how to file those fundraising reports, how to even like where to buy flyers at an affordable rate. Like it's surprisingly expensive to print flyers. So just finding out how to do those things efficiently, cost effectively, working within limited means, getting the word out, getting the vote out. Like it has been crazy. Filming selfie videos is something I've never done before. And I've been filming a lot. I don't know if you've seen my Facebook page, but I've been filming a lot of selfie videos just talking about policy issues, giving my followers updates. But this entire thing has been a learning curve. And it's been fast-paced in September, and as I've been telling everybody basically around me, this is the final stretch. So we're tripling down on our outreach. So right before we came here, knocking on doors, talking to people about the values, and yeah, we're just having a lot of fun. So,
Good.
Yeah.
I suppose then that leads very quickly into my next question, which is, okay, you're a first-timer. Yep. This isn't the sort of thing that a lot of people suddenly have interest in. So tell me a little bit about that. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run for office this year.
So I decided to run. I heard that there's a few seats open. My family and I love Moscow. We love living here. I mean, we come to this park almost every day. And I wanted to give back to the city. That's been something I've been saying to everybody who's asked. I want to give back to the city. And my background is in administrative processes, process efficiency consulting, energy and water consulting. And I was like, those are probably skill sets that translate pretty well into city administration. But more than that, I think it's really how I was raised. So my father was in the military. My grandfather was in the military. My other grandfather survived World War II as a resident of Holland. And they've all been very civically engaged. And I was kind of raised with that in my blood. And I was a Boy Scout. I learned about civics. I was involved in volunteering. And it's just like, okay, when I signed up to run for city council, I wasn't thinking about any of that, really.
Oh, interesting.
But
okay.
it was like I felt compelled to sign up to run, to give back to the city. And over the month that I've been running, I've been kind of thinking about that, like what led up to that decision. And I feel like it was really my childhood and the desire to be a member of the community involved in giving back. So.
Gotcha. You mentioned a whole bunch of credentials in there, which a bunch of different types of consulting. I almost caught it. I don't know if I did, but unpack that a little bit, because that's, I'm not going to say it's an unconventional career path, but it's a career path that not very many people have taken that I know.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So I initially went into university to study environmental science and resource management to go in as an environmental protection member of the Coast Guard. I wanted to go into officer candidacy school. I was living in Oxnard at the time, and I wanted to actually go out and help prevent and mitigate oil spills, check for illegal dumping of environmental pollutants. But during the course of my college degree, I learned about building energy management, which is 1,000% more boring than Coast Guard environmental protection.
But I can only imagine.
Yes, but oddly enough, I fell in love with building energy efficiency. So energy and water efficiency, figuring out how to make buildings and cities and portfolios of buildings more efficient. And I started at the university I was attending at the time as a sustainability consultant. I did a number of things. I'm not going to list off my resume, but I did a number of things there. And ever since then, I've been working in various types of efficiency consulting firms and government organizations, educational institutions, to help them get their portfolios of buildings more efficient and effective. And Part of that, and it's something I've grown into over time, is process efficiency consulting. So as I go into different organizations, one of the first things I end up usually getting assigned to do or doing is looking at the existing processes and finding out ways to apply like Lean Six Sigma to make those processes way more streamlined, way more efficient, so that my employers or my clients can save just buckets of money by being more effective. And I think that's something that actually translates pretty well to the city. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I focus a lot on energy and utilities, though. It's just how can we make these buildings use less energy? Because that not only saves on your carbon output, that saves on your electricity bill, and that hits your bottom line as well.
And so when you find yourself knee deep in those processes, where you're in the process of making something more, figuring out, okay, how do we make XYZ building more energy efficient or whatnot? I wouldn't know necessarily all of the methods by which you would make a building more energy efficient. I assume there's a bunch.
There's a number of ways, yeah.
Are there any that you find are more common, or conversely, are there any that are underutilized? It's like, you know what, actually this is a method that works really, really well and people don't really use it because XYZ reason, and these are the ones that people mostly use.
I would say actually that the energy and water efficiency industry is pretty well standardized. So if you are looking to do anything related to reducing your building's energy usage, or your portfolios, like if you have a portfolio, let's say you have a portfolio of like 400, 500, 1,000 buildings, you're going to be doing very similar things throughout your portfolio, and pretty much everyone knows how to do that. But the key element is understanding the data that leads to those decisions. So usually you can say, okay, we got to do insulation, we got to do better windows, we got to do more efficient light fixtures. Like, it's very actually quite simple. And actually one of the things that we're finding is a lot of these appliances that are like touted as Energy Star or energy efficient but they don't last as long as, let's say, better built older appliances, so you end up paying sometimes more of the lifetime of the product. Now that's a kind of, it depends, it really depends situation to situation.
I assume it's like super in the weeds with some of this stuff, because just because a microwave goes out after 2 years as opposed to 5 years doesn't mean that a fridge behaves the same way.
Yeah, so I'm getting kind of in the weeds of appliances, but one of the main things that I look at is I try to get all of the data I can about a portfolio of buildings, or if I'm working with one buildings, all of the data I can about the equipment in that building, and understand the baseline. What is that building doing? What is it actually doing day in, day out over a 24-hour cycle throughout the seasons? And then that gives me an idea of what exactly needs to be addressed to reduce that building's energy waste, if it is wasting energy. Some buildings actually perform great, and messing with it will make it worse, or make it bad when it's doing great. It's the same thing with a portfolio of buildings. When you're monitoring thousands of buildings, let's say you're monitoring a city full of buildings, you don't necessarily have the resources to go and check every equipment piece in that building, and maybe you can't even, because you have buildings that are a couple hundred years old, or 150 years old. But what you can do is look at the utility bills of those buildings and check the baseline of those buildings to see, what is it doing year over year? What is it doing season over season? Do we have a water leak? Can we address that water leak so we don't waste water and waste money at that building? This is really basic things like that. It's really just accounting is what we're doing. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to bore the people who are watching this with accounting, but
no, it sounds like you could go very in depth on this side of things.
I could go very in depth. One of the things I've really been happy to do over the past couple of years is getting into grid reliability and what is going on to the power grid, especially here in the Pacific Northwest. What is going on to the national power grid, and the policies around that. Over in Washington, we see, and I'm actually going to talk about this for a second because I think it's really important.
No, all good.
So Washington State, our neighbor, has many, many, many new bills, a couple years old now, maybe 5 or 6. The clean buildings, performance standard, decarbonization of district energy systems, IM 2066, which regulates natural gas, and the challenges to that. They have a slew of bills that make it so hard to do business efficiently in Washington, because it makes the energy so much more expensive. It makes it so that the utilities are crunched on how to get clean. They require clean energy to be sold by a certain date. And it's just making it a really difficult environment to do business in Washington State in. And that's just the energy bills. There's a ton of other stuff going on. And one of the things I've been hammering down hard in this campaign is we should be making ourselves, Idaho, but Moscow specifically, because we live right on the border, right? We should be making ourselves super attractive to bringing existing businesses from Washington State into Moscow, Idaho. We need to be figuring out every single path and avenue, whether that's from the city council seats, whether that's from the mayor's office, anything and everything we can to say, please come to Moscow, Idaho. We're a business-friendly environment. We're building new places for you to bring your businesses here. We're going to make ourselves available and attractive to bring this business, because those are jobs. Those are high-paying jobs and everything in between. And I think that we are at a critical turning point, opportunity to bring businesses here. And that doesn't come to the neglect of businesses that exist here either, because when you bring more businesses here, it lifts everybody up.
Right, because assuming they're in different sectors, they're able to benefit each other, because not that there's going to be mining in Idaho, but the miners will eat at the diners and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's, as I've heard it said before.
Yeah.
So one question off of that framing of the situation. For anybody who hasn't been living under a rock, the distinctions between Idaho's laws and Washington's laws are pretty stark most of the time, particularly when it comes to regulatory situations.
Yeah.
I would ask you, okay, so why isn't the difference between Idaho and Washington enough to convince more people to come over from Washington? Or, maybe more specifically, do you see any particular barriers to entry within Moscow that prevents them from attracting businesses from coming over the border?
Well, there's one very specific reason, I think, and that's going to be, it can be difficult to bring a business into Moscow if there's no place to put that business. So it can be hard to find an industrial plat. It can be hard to find a business, something zoned for business that's available to have that new building built or redeveloped. I think that's something that the city can do actually pretty effectively, is figure out zone, like either rezone places or make new places that are zoned for businesses, right?
Okay.
There's a 51-acre development that's in process right now in the south of the city. I'm really excited to see how that grows. But it's stuff like that that we need more of, and quickly. So bringing those, reducing those barriers to building new business parks, I think in a way that fits the character of the city. You know, I don't think you want to have, and this wouldn't happen, but I don't think you want to have like an aluminum smelting plant right next to East City Park. So you want to do it in a sensible way that fits the city. But another barrier for businesses coming to Moscow is the availability of workers. So it doesn't make sense, even if you have the business park, to let's say you're building a window framing business or a window manufacturing business. It doesn't make sense to build here if you just don't have the workforce. And you don't get the workforce if the workforce can't afford to live here.
Right.
So if you're paying people, let's say, you know, above minimum wage, or somewhere in that range, they're not going to be able to afford to live here if they're making a certain amount, under a certain amount, because it's just so expensive. Like, I rent, and I'm in the middle of my career, and I'm just like, okay, like, I'm glad our landlords and I get along really, really well, because it would stink to have to move right now, right? And it's just like, and I'm in the middle of my career. So it's just like, if you're an entry-level career person, or if you're an entry-level worker, let's say you're a barista, or a baker, or someone working at a department store, retail, food service, any of those like entry-level jobs that make this city a city, like, you need them here. I've been getting calls, and I'm sorry, I'm talking really passionately.
No,
this
go
is
for
like
it.
really
Go
important to me. I've been getting emails from people that are like, please do something about the cost of living, because we live in a trailer park, and the people that live with us in the trailer park, like, I'm a working mom, I do DoorDash, my husband has like a minimum wage job or a number of minimum wage jobs, and it's like, we're looking at having to move out of Moscow. And so it's just like, we need to address that. And we need to address that quickly. And I say it in all of my videos, I know that city council can't, and it honestly shouldn't, go out and change rent prices, housing prices. There's a few different ways for the government to try to do those things. They always end up blowing up in the face later. But like, these shouldn't and really can't. But we just need to find ways to attract developers here by making it easy for them and easier to build houses, to buy land, annex it into the city, pipe out utilities, bring down those first costs so that we can build more homes. There is a recommendation. I'm not letting you get a word in edgewise.
Go for it. Go for it.
I'm sorry, because I've been thinking about this stuff so much.
No, this is interesting. One thing I want to ask you about, just based on that conversation, you mentioned there's a number of different things that the government could try to do to alter, whether it's the rent prices or whatnot. I know that there's been a conversation for some time. I think it actually started with some of the trailer park conversations, the conversation about housing authorities.
Right.
That's gone pretty strong. I remember back in the county, it went through the rural cities for a little bit. And I don't know if they signed up for it or not, but I know that the city of Moscow is currently considering whether or not they would be interested in forming one. Tell us what you think a little bit about that as a possible solution to the problem that you're describing.
Housing authorities are very interesting. So I wrote a letter to the editor of the Moscow Pullman Daily News about that. And I used examples from big cities and housing projects. And in the research that I did in preparing for that paper, I was looking at housing authority projects in the United States, but really across the planet, across time. And I'm looking at, okay, are these actually benefiting everyone over the long run? And I couldn't find an example of a housing authority that really positively, meaningfully, over the long term, impacted the price of housing for the entire community over the long run. Now, in the response to the letter, in the response to the letters to the editor, the Moscow Pullman Daily News. Wow, that is a long sentence. Anyways, I had someone respond to that letter saying that, well, there are 3 housing authorities in Idaho actually that are doing quite well. And that's a great point. I should have actually looked within the state first of all. So I took that advice and I looked into those. And while they may be benefiting some families, and I think that's actually quite good, right? You want to be able to uplift the people who are suffering and need the most help, right? I believe in that. But if you look at the actual economic impact of those housing authorities in those locations, it's not done anything to slow or stall the incredible price compression and rent burdens on homeowners and renters. In fact, I would have to spend a lot of time picking through the data to find positive correlations, right, between housing authorities, especially the ones in Idaho, because they're actually quite limited. In the data, I'm not sure. I would have to go looking around for it. But I would say there might even be a correlation between the existence of a housing authority and negative price impacts and societal impacts in those communities. Now, I don't want to say that, go out and say, hammer that in, because I'm a data guy and I want, before I say anything with conviction like that, I want to look at the data. But the main thing that I want to stress about housing authorities, and our president council members like Drew Davis and Julia Parker have mentioned this themselves too, is they're not free. Somebody has to pay for them. And now the Fair and Affordable Housing Commission has said that, they'll try to do it without raising fines or fees or taxes on the community. But at that point, why not just do a Habitat for Humanity or help Habitat for Humanity find grants, find external government resources? Because Moscow Housing Authority, they say it won't be an additional cost on the taxpayers. They say it won't be a liability on the city. But every way you look at it, it inevitably will be. Because if you're issuing subsidized loans, if the city is issuing requirements to establish an MHA, it's just another level of government bureaucracy that increases costs on the taxpayer. Even if you're saying, well, we're not going to charge the taxpayer and increase tax on it, but if you have to have someone, an administrator, do that at the city now, that's an additional cost, and that money has to come from somewhere. Or if you say, okay, well, we'll have volunteers do it, or we'll have a nonprofit do it. Okay, but those are additional costs, and where's that money coming from? And if it's coming from outside of the tax base, if that dries up, well, what then happens to the housing authority and and all of the processes surrounding it? So, long story short, too long didn't listen on that. If you're still listening, the main point is, I think that there are market-based solutions that can help everyone. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is, again, reduce the first costs and the barrier to entries for developers to come in. Because I've talked to a few developers here, and they said the reason why they build big luxury homes and like kind of like you're in the middle of your life or you've made it essentially.
Right.
Is because they need to recoup the costs to develop. Like, and you see this like car dealerships too. Like houses and cars pretty similar in a lot of ways. Is like the dealership doesn't make money selling economy boxes, right? When I bought my Ford Fiesta, the dealer was like, "Yeah, we're actually losing money on this."
Well, it's a Ford Fiesta, so.
It's a Ford Fiesta. It's great. I love that car. It's just like, they're losing money versus, buying the King Ranch F-150, F-250, F-350 with all the trimming and fixings. They're making a margin on every single upgrade that they put on there. It's the same thing with houses. So when you are paying a ton of upfront costs on developing a plot into, let's just say, small single-family homes, you are taking on huge risk. You'll sell the homes, that's for sure, but you're going to have price creep, and you're going to have a really hard time, even with that price creep, like making those homes affordable because of all the costs that you have to recoup. So it's like, why not just build a big house and make a big margin and recoup the costs and make a return on investment? It's just like, it's basic economics.
Right. And that only gets more complicated, I suppose, just based on what you're saying, the more pieces of red tape or regulation that come into that, because ultimately it ends up, whether it's a factor of actual cost, like financially, or opportunity cost, just in terms of time it takes to get up and running, you're dealing with elements of that. And it sounds like what you're saying is it would be preferable to figure out ways to reduce friction there, reduce time delays, reduce the amount of red tape, so to speak, that's in there, so that you can actually get to the business that you should be in, which is the business of building houses, providing people places to live, and I would assume similarly with the world of business industry, like you talked about, the zoning and that sort of thing.
Right, exactly.
Are there any specific policies then that the city is currently holding to that you say, you know what, I could actually lay a finger and say that's one of the issues there?
The one thing that I've heard from the developers I've been talking to, like I said, like you've mentioned before, is the cost of permitting. And it's just like, it can cost $40,000 to lay just a short run of utility pipe out to a development in a residential area or an industrial area. I've heard other things where it's just like they would love to be able to have competitive bids on running that utility. So the ability to say, okay, well, the city says it's going to cost this much to do this work, but I can get like a licensed plumber. It's not just like your friend down the street who says he can do it, but like someone who's licensed and qualified to do it. For actually a fraction of the cost and half the time. All right, so allowing the city finding ways to allow that kind of creativity, that ingenuity, again, doing it well and right, and in a professional manner, so that we want a high quality system in this city. So that's the first thing is like, okay, what policies from the city can we specifically look at? And I'll be honest with you, Aiden, I've been looking specifically at like strategic plans, master plans, the budgets, and I haven't been looking specifically so much at like the line-by-line zoning details and policy.
Gotcha. So you're looking more at the big picture elements of, okay, where have we set our sights in terms of a vision for the city, and thinking about ways to tweak that. I would assume, let's say you were to be elected, you'd be looking more at those specific line-by-line zoning regulations.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing that I've been doing right now is trying to orient myself into what has been said and what has been done and what has actually happened, and then talking with the people who are actually out there trying to do the work, right? So the developers primarily is like, okay, what can the city do to make this easier? And it's all the stuff that we've been talking about. Now the specific like line item codes and specific things that like the city council can do, I think we've been talking about. But I think anyone who is sitting in city council right now and into the future should be taking a heavy look or asking the city to be like, okay, this is the goal. We're gonna do a review of everything that the city has control over, like everything that we can influence. Now, we're not talking about state code or federal code, we're talking about city level action items. And we're gonna do a review and see what things we can pass, what things we can take away, what things we can reduce, to reduce that amount of just like air friction and ground friction to getting this economy going much, much faster than it has been. Right? So.
Just to think through the rhetoric of that, I think there are plenty of people who hear the words reduce or scale back or whatnot and think, okay, that means that the city is doing less to combat the problem. How would you respond to that kind of argumentation regarding what you're saying is your vision for what ought to be done?
I guess it means like reduce what? Less of what? When it terms, I think, well, just to be clear what I mean by reduce. When I say reduce, I mean looking at all the red tape, like you mentioned earlier, and identifying it and cutting it, right? And if not cutting it, then let's say that the red tape is right at the neckline, making it easier to like step over that, you know, and meet the requirements and the needs of the city without having excessive review processes. I mean, okay, has it met local code? Has it met state code? Has it met federal code? Okay, then we should be good to go, right? Like we should be good to go, and let's build. Let's build houses, let's build businesses. When I say reduce, I don't mean like slash indiscriminately, blindly, and frantically. No, this is a consulting kind of mentality. It's a review of the baseline, what is working, what isn't working, by interviewing stakeholders, right? So the citizens, the developers, the business owners, and be like, okay, and that's basically what I've been doing in this campaign. What's working, what's not working, what can we do to alleviate those pressures and those issues and those bottlenecks? Long story short, it's like we should get out of the way. Like we should do everything we can to get out of the way and let this city thrive. It's doing really well right now. I think we're in a period of just national kind of like rockiness in terms of the price of housing, but everyone knows that the cost of housing in Moscow is well insulated from national fluctuations. So we should look at why that's the case and try to address those factors directly.
Gotcha. Switching gears a little bit, just talking about campaigning in general, because you've been at this for a month, and this is your first campaign that I'm aware of you running for anything.
Right. Student government.
Okay. All right. Well, I want to ask you then, is there anything that, you know, when it comes down to thinking about, okay, this is a campaign, this is what I got to do, what have been elements of it that you've been able to say, yeah, I thought this was going to happen and this did happen, and then conversely, what have been some things where it's like, I didn't see that coming at all. I did not know how much of XYZ I'd be doing.
Oh, wow. I didn't see any of this coming at all.
Okay.
I literally signed up and I was like, okay, I'm going to run, and this is a small town, and I think this is going to be pretty chill. And then it turns out that this is a really big deal. And after I signed up, I think we talked about this at the beginning of this interview, it was just like, okay, there's actually a lot of, like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it well and to the best of my ability. And it hit me that, okay, if I'm going to do that, then there's a ton of stuff that I need to catch up on, right? So the stuff that I didn't expect was just how intense campaigning, like actually campaigning, would be. And I'm really loving it. So one of the things that I've really been enjoying doing is just leaflet distribution, like knocking on doors or placing leaflets on doors, because you get to see every part of the city. We've been through, I wouldn't say most, but much of the city at this point. And it's so interesting to me to see the different characters of the neighborhoods in town. Fort Russell versus like this new Watani Drive, like these relatively new houses, or the trailer parks, or the apartment complexes. Different kind of people that live there, what's important to them. And it's given me a lot of passion on the talking points I've been talking about today. It's just like, we need to figure out the housing price situation, because there's a lot of people who are having a hard time out there. You know, we get insulated in this, how beautiful East City Park is, but then you go to the apartment complexes and it's just like, oh, this is like hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And I've been living in apartment complexes since I left my parents' house a long time ago. And I was like, dude, this is hard. And we got to figure out how to reach out to these people and help them and let them know that they do have a voice. right? They do have a voice in the way that the city is run. And I think that if they get out and they vote for a city that is fiscally responsible and frugal and is really doing its best to get out and get jobs and homes built in Moscow, that we can lift everyone up. We can lift the person who's living in the brand new luxury home up, and we can lift up the hundreds of people who are living in really rough situations up as well. But we have to be able to get Moscow to grow.
You may have indirectly touched on this already, but your campaign slogan, "A Moscow for All," tell us a little bit about that.
You know, I think one of the main things I want to address in this campaign is that this is a Moscow for everyone. This is a Moscow, no matter your race, creed, color, religion, what name you call God. If you believe in God, this is a Moscow for all. And the ways that we can make this a Moscow for all is by uplifting everyone, by finding ways to make housing more attainable, jobs more attainable, and the city run effectively, efficiently, and frugally. And believe it or not, that's basically what every other candidate is campaigning on.
No, yeah.
But,
I mean, that's something that's always, at one level, exciting to see is the fact that, you know, if you've been to the forums or you've spent any time looking at the various candidates' campaign Facebook pages, you end up discovering a pretty strong love for the community and a desire to work through all the issues, because at the end of the day, maybe part of it is that we're a small town, and so it's very easier to think in terms of everyone as opposed to different sectors.
Right.
I imagine we would talk about things a little bit differently if we were a town of over 100,000 people versus a town of roughly 25, 30,000 people. But it's encouraging to see a lot of like-mindedness among the candidates that currently exist. Although I suppose it makes your job harder in terms of differentiating yourself from the rest of everyone else.
That is the craziest thing I've seen. It's just like, okay, you're running with, what is it, 8 others now? I think it's 8.
I believe so,
it's It's 8 people for 3 seats. I'm the new guy, right? I feel like I came crashing the party in from left field. And I'm just like, okay, we're going to hit this really hard. We're going to hit it fast, and we're going to hit it with a ton of energy, right? And that's what I've been doing. And it's still just like, okay, let's get some traction here. It's kind of like, let's put the pedal to the metal and set the fires on fire, and let's just see what happens. Like I said, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to give it 500%. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah. Now, obviously, like, there's elements of the national conversation that ends up bleeding into the local conversation, particularly when it comes to the various kinds of polarization that can affect a campaign like this, even though it's a nonpartisan campaign.
Right.
You're not really running on party status so much as you're running on your stance on different community issues. When it comes to bridging divides like that, what sorts of experiences have you had, and what sorts of, you know, skills, tools have you used when it comes to those conversations? Because I imagine it's not just limited to talking with constituents, talking to people who are interested in the issues. It'll also take place in council potentially if you get elected, and there's a variety of opinions. You're one voice among 6, and there'll be divisions there, unsurprisingly, because we all have divisions on different things. So talk us through that.
So there's a lot to kind of break down in there, but one of the main things is this is a professional position, right? City council, you're sitting on a council of 6. And the biggest thing is just keep it professional between your peers. You know, treat your peers either like a colleague or a client, well, you know, as a colleague. You know, as like, you probably, like you said, have a number of things that you disagree with. You may like peanut butter and jelly, and I may like, I don't actually like, I don't like anchovies and pickle sandwiches. That sounds pretty gross.
That's that's an interesting.
But it's just like,
but okay.
Yeah. So regardless of where you fall on these particular issues, the reason why you got into that seat is because you're representing constituents, and it's vitally important for the members of city council to be able to have professional dialogue and discourse between each other. Even if you may be the only one voting no on a certain issue and everyone's voting yes, that's totally okay. Right, but you need to be able to express why you're voting yes or no on a certain issue, and give a good reason for it, and in a calm way, without, you know, being a jerk. I think just don't be a jerk. In terms of our national dialogue, I mean, I've heard a lot of people who are very thankful that I'm running as an independent, and I think that just kind of makes sense. I mean, this is a nonpartisan race to begin with, but people, and I know that people know that, but one of the main questions I get asked is like, are you a Democrat? Are you a Republican? I'm just like, no, I'm an independent, and I'm running on local issues. You know, how you voted is how you voted, and we have that right to vote however we want. You could write in whoever you want, but I'm here to represent the needs of local people. You know, I have a son who's going to be 2 here in a couple months. We have another one on the way, and I want to serve them. You know, I want to serve everyone's families and children, the students, and making and keeping Moscow a place that is wonderful to live in. And those are not political issues. Those are just community issues. And if we can talk about that and keep it at that level, has no problem being neighborly with each other.
Well, if I were a campaign manager, I would argue that that's a fantastic note to end on, but I want to give you the opportunity to tell the audience, is there any best way to reach you? Anything you want to tell them about your campaign? And then what do you have coming up next?
Best way to reach me is just my first and last name.com, so johnslagboom.com. It's pretty easy to get me there. I have my cell phone number on there. I have my email on there. You can hit me up on X, Instagram, Facebook. I am on social, I am on those things all the time, all the time. If you ping me, I will see it unless you got the number or email wrong. So please reach out to me anytime. I love talking to people. I love hearing their thoughts and their concerns, and addressing concerns too. In terms of what's happening next in the campaign, I will be door knocking pretty much from the point I get off of work till it gets dark every single day. And I'm really looking forward to that because I've been meeting all sorts of wonderful people across Moscow and just making sure that they know that there's an election going on and to vote for Slagboom on Tuesday, November 4th.
John, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Aiden.
And that was my conversation with John Slagboom. As with all candidates, I highly encourage you to check them out yourself so that you can go into the election well prepared and educated. We'll have the relevant links posted with this video, and as always, if you have any questions, please reach out. I'm Aiden Anderson, and this has been Candidate Candids. We'll see you next time.